So, voice assistants. I will not talk about them from a consumer perspective. I will mainly talk about them from a developer perspective, and specifically from a JavaScript perspective. And also, when I say voice assistants, I mean it's quite a broad definition. I'm mainly going to talk about the ones that you interact with without doing anything specifically. So not the ones that you have to take up or click on a button or start somehow, just the ones that are there. They are where I am, they're a part of the environment. I just say something and they listen. So mainly the ones that are always on and nothing else. A small detail before I go into more details is that they right now are quite good at speaking English and understanding English. I think Amazon has released their voice assistant in Germany as well. I have no idea how well it works, but I guess it works okay. And the reason I say this is, of course, we live in Sweden, and for example, to have English as a barrier is a limitation for some people. My wife, for example, thinks that it's a little too geeky to talk English to a machine. She thinks it's a little too geeky to talk to a machine at all, of course, but English makes it worse. My kids, on the other hand, think this is supernatural. They watch YouTube videos all the time in English, so this is just whatever. We speak English if it speaks English with us. And I, of course, use it quite much. I use my Google Home every day at home to play music. You just tell it to play some music and it will play for you. You can use it for timers, which is this stupid little thing, but if you're cooking and your hands are dirty and you want to have a timer for 10 minutes, you just say it. You don't have to like turn your attention to the assistant. You just speak and that's all. And we use it to dim the lights in the kitchen because we have a normal switch and we don't want to change it to like a dimmer thing. So we can say to the lamp to dim itself, which is actually the only thing my wife does when I'm not home. And I think last week I got to a point where I was at work. There was music playing. I wanted to change the music, and I was about to tell the music to change before I realized that we don't have a Google Assistant, a Google Home at the office. So I quickly went to my computer and did something else. So assistants, there are quite a few out there. As I said before, I'm just going to talk about the ones that you interact with without doing anything else than talking. And there are mainly two of them right now. The Amazon Echo, which is there, and the Google Home, which is there. And the Amazon Echo, just a quick background, they began to develop this in 2010, and they released it in 2015 without making that much noise. I mean, they just released it. I didn't know that they were going to do something like that, and it suddenly got quite good reviews, and it began to get momentum, and then suddenly it became this huge success, to the point where if you read the news at CES 2017, every other news was about how someone had connected their stuff to Echo, the Alexa engine that drives it. And it also has become quite like the hub for home automation, which we before this didn't have. I mean, every other producer of hubs for doing smart home things tried to do their thing, and nobody gained the throne of being the hub for everything. But I think this has gotten to be that. And for me, at least, I didn't understand why Google didn't come up with something like this before, because, I mean, if you think about Google, they are the ones that are using voice recognition for quite a while with their Translate and things like that. So it was strange, but at Google I/O last year, they announced that they were going to have something like this, and they released it just 6 months ago, and I don't know if it's going to be a success. We'll see. It has been, yes, and I prefer it actually, but that might be because I'm a Google fanboy, so just... And then, of course, we have Apple. I was expected them to say something last year, but nothing came. And, of course, you can say, if you're an Apple fanboy, there's Siri, and I think Siri is actually the biggest hurdle that the other companies have to sell assistants, because in the mind of consumers, you already have something. You have Siri, you can talk to it. That's no difference. The only difference is that you don't have to press a button. But for me, that's the biggest difference. That's what makes this easy, and the other ones something where I have to do a conscious action to start. So Siri is not for me an alternative for this. And I have to say before I go on, Microsoft is doing something as well with Cortana. I don't know that much about it, but it's going to get there as well, I guess. So the difference between the similarities first, of course. They both are always on. You don't have to press anything to get them to understand you. They are pretty good at English and conversation, both telling them to do something, but also speaking back and have a conversations if you want to do that with a machine. And then they have some differences. There are quite a couple of differences, but the main differences are that Amazon calls their abilities skills and Google calls them actions, which was kind of difficult to search for in the beginning. Google Actions, you get quite a few results. And the biggest difference, and this is a big difference, is that on the Amazon device, you have to enable the skills. So it's like installing an app. So you take it and you say, I want to have this app on my machine, and then you can use it. On the Google, everything is already enabled, which means that Google has to accept your application and accept the trigger phrase that you use for them. And that has quite a big implication on what happens. This means that you can do whatever you want and you let the people decide which ones they want to use. If you have two that have the same name, it's up to you to decide which one to use. This one, if the name is taken, you can't use that. You have to come up with something else. So it's a big difference. And the most important thing, I think, about voice assistants overall is that both companies, and especially Google, have this vision of that's where they're going. That's like the biggest thing they're doing. And I think there is one developer or engineer at Google that said this, that I'm not going to read. You can read it yourself. But I mean, it's obvious that their goal is to get there. Their goal of interaction at some point in the future is going to be through this, because it's much easier to talk than to write something or fill up a form or whatever it might be. And that means that when we're developing things, well, whatever it might be, we need to make sure that Google or Amazon or Apple or whoever is going to read our code, that we expose the data in a format that they understand. Otherwise, they will never be able to do this, or they will just do it with the people that actually expose the data in a good way, and then you will be forgotten. So, yeah. But let's get back to JavaScript developers. From a developer perspective, there are some other differences than the ones that I mentioned before. And that comes basically to how you begin to develop. Now, it has been a little while since I developed Amazon skills, but you create an account on Amazon, you create a skill, you can begin to use it quite rapidly because it's your skill. It's a private skill, so you just begin to code. On Google, you have a preview of your skill, which means that you enable it for like 24 hours, basically, and it's your skill still. Nobody else will be able to use it, but then it dies. And of course, that makes it a little more difficult for us that just want to do some private stuff at home to turn on lamps or whatever it might be. But there are ways of getting around that. Amazon has an SDK, of course. Google has an SDK and something it's called API.ai. That is like a if this then that thingy for creating actions, and it's a little easier. You have like forms you fill out, you say please react to this phrase and then call this webhook or connect to if this then that or whatever it might be. But I mean, we are developers, so we're of course just looking at this one. And the biggest problem I see with the Google Home, even if I'm just going to talk about Google Home in a minute, is that you can have your private skills on the Amazon Echo. On Google Home, right now with the SDK, you can just have one at a time, which is frustrating. So I can just create one, and then if I want to do another one, I have to replace it. And I think that's, of course, something they will take care of, but right now that's how it works.
What do you mean?
It means that... sorry?
No limit to that skill, just one that skill. I mean,
No. The skill is the app or the ability that you have in your device.
Skills here and just one.
Oh, sorry. That should be action. Sorry. Yes, totally correct. No limit of dev skills, no developer skills needed. Yeah, you know.
It just works.
Yes. So with that said, let's go into the Google Home. You have seen it. It's this small thing, nothing more. And the only thing, it is quite a dumb device. I mean, it has good microphone and a okay speaker if you're not an audiophile, which I am not. And that's it. And a Wi-Fi connector, of course. And when you begin to develop for it, as I mentioned before, we have two different ways of developing actions. I'm not going to talk about that one. I'm going to talk about this one. And one thing that I actually realized yesterday when I was preparing for this is that when Google released the SDK in December, they talked about how you develop with this one, and that was great. Huge page of things, and this one as well. But when you see the examples, the only example and the only SDK they had was Node, which means that I don't know if this is like a super conscious thing that Google took and say, oh, we love you all Node.js developers. But I mean, I feel the love, of course. But what it means is that they actually are targeting web developers. And that's a huge thing. I mean, that means that we, with the knowledge we have, and you will have soon, can do voice-enabled actions, voice-enabled products, and I think that's amazing. And I mean, that's something that I felt for quite a while, that our knowledge with web technology is just expanding more and more. I mean, a couple of years ago, you couldn't do much more than web. Now you can do IoT things. You can create. You can talk to hardware directly, and you can do stuff like this just with the same knowledge. And I think that's amazing. So how does it work? It's quite easy. When you're talking to a device like this, you have a trigger word. Google has OK Google or Hey Google. When you say that, it will react. It doesn't react right now because I muted it. Amazon has Alexa, Echo, or Computer, which I would really much like to have here as well on the Google Home, but I don't. You say that. And what it begins to do, it's begin to send everything you say, every sound to Google. So privacy, don't care about that. I mean, the privacy thing is already, yeah, you have signed with blood. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. But as soon as you say this, it will begin to send every sound. So you can begin to talk to your action. You say, okay, I want to do this action. And when you have done that, all the sound is converted to text in their super huge sci-fi server things. And it will be routed to the correct action that you have provided them with. Which means that it will do a request to your server, a post request. And you do whatever you need to do there. You have your super cool action logic somehow. You respond with it with a string. You can respond with some other things. Maybe you need to do some identification that has to be on a device, but normally you just say something, and that will be sent back to your assistant, and it will be spoken for you. And that's basically it, nothing more. And from a developer perspective, what we can do is actually just handle those things. Everything else is handled for us. We don't need to care about everything else. So as long as we can serve this request and we can do whatever we want and we can respond, then we are done. I will get into that, as you can see. And the only thing you need to actually get to this point is basically a Google account, of course. You need to have HTTPS, a domain with HTTPS. That's very important, and I don't know if you have noticed, but everything Google is doing is getting to that point anyway. And with Let's Encrypt, you don't have any excuse anyway. And you need a server or some kind of thing that will respond to a request. And I put question mark because now everyone is talking about serverless things, but somewhere you need to have something that responds. And with that, I will try to show you how you do it. This demonstration will need quite a lot of Wi-Fi connection things, so let's hope that we have offered enough goats to the Wi-Fi gods today. So, Well, before I begin to show you the code, it's quite easy to do this, but it takes a couple of steps. There is no like one-click install and then suddenly everything is working. You need to create an account, create a project, create a specification file, and create your code. So it's going to be a little back and forward here. The first thing you need is something called G-Actions. And that is basically just a bash script. I hope everyone is comfortable with bash scripting. This is just a command. And when you write it, it helps you. And it's quite easy. You download it from this beautiful site that Google has. And when you have done that, you write G-Actions in it. And what that does, if you know Node, npm init is almost the same. It will create a JSON file for you that is called actions.json. And I will do that now to see if we can see how it works. So let's switch to this one. Let's switch to a much more beautiful console. Zoom, yes, of course. One small detail here is that since we need HTTPS to get the webhook to us, we need to be on somewhere where it's accessible. So this is a server somehow. And as you have seen, I follow the best rules ever to get into as root to a Unix server. And since this is a server where I don't want to clutter it with lots of stuff, I'm going just to run a node, but it didn't work because I already had something. Let's do like this. Foo source, and let's call it something else then. No. I prepared this so many times I don't remember what I had on it. Oh. Yeah, thank you. There we are. Now, a beautiful coding environment. This is my personal Docker image with Tmux and all the plugins for Vim that I use. Ah, beautiful. Of course, because everyone loves to listen to people that uses Vim, of course. So let's create something here. So right now I have some files, doesn't matter. What I will do now is that I already downloaded the tools. I cheated. We have the G-Actions and we write in it and it will create a file which already existed. So let's just open it. So what it does is simply create a slow file. Just create this template for us. Version. Your project ID, that's what you need to register on Google, on the Google site. The launch intent, that means the thing that it will do when you just open your application, say start, whatever your name you're giving it, and some other kind of intent, that means like a follow-up command. I will show you an example later. And so this is quite easy. I will show you that if you go into the Google Home Cloud, you can create a project. And the only interesting part here is actually this one. You need to have an ID here. That's it. I don't know how much more you need if you begin to use all their APIs, but that's what you need right now. So let's get back to the presentation. Because I don't want to live code right now, I'm going to cheat here as well and have prepared screenshots with code, which are quite small, but you have to do it with it anyway. So, version label, name of the project, and I think you have 4 different voices you can use. And the thing that comes after this is actually how you begin to interact with your application. So this is a screenshot from Google's description. You say, okay, Google, to begin. You say talk to, for example, that's one of the examples, to personal chef, that would be my action. Then it's like, what do you want to do with my action? And then whatever text that you expect to get into. And the interesting part, of course, is that this text can have variables, so they can recognize segments of whatever it is you are doing. So if we go back to this one, we have a launch intent, and we have just a webhook. That's where it should do the post request, nothing more. And after that, we can begin to do cool things. We can say, okay, we have another intent that is show something in the console, because of course we want to show stuff in the console. And then we have this here, which is how what phrases it should recognize. So in this case, it will say show me and then a variable from schema.org. I will go into that later, or some other formulation of your phrase. This is some other way I might say it, because of course everyone is going to talk to your application in some different way, so you have to have a couple of these. And here, the important part here is that this one here are variables, and schema.org provides you with variables where you can define the words that might come in, which I think it makes much easier for them to recognize the language. So at schema.org you can find like huge list of different things that you provide to it. So say I want to just recognize colors, and you might use that one, or whatever it might be. It narrows down, I think, the error margin that it might have otherwise. And then, of course, you tell it where it should go. And that's it. That's your setup, at least. Not the server, but the setup. And when you're ready with that, you use your G actions to preview, to send the package, to tell it to be alive as long as possible. I think they will shut down it anyway, but say you can do a cron job and let it open all the time. And then you have your invocation name, which goes back to this one. So this is actually, oh, fuck. Wrong button. So there you go. This is what you actually are going to say to your machine to make it trigger whatever you're doing. So let's do that and see what happens. Nothing will happen, of course, first, but. Oh, this is right now they're private, so you can choose whatever you want. Later it might be a little more difficult. Yes. Domains again. Yes, perfect. So I prepared the example you had there. It's here somewhere. Yes, it's Magic Console. And since I want to cheat again, let's take my ready-made thing. If I write this down, it will actually ask me to authenticate myself. Of course, I haven't told them who I am. I can't just run whatever I want. They can do whatever they want. I can't. So what you need to do here is copy this code, open your browser, put it here, and then you have this first the normal thing, and then you have this beautiful site that Google made for us, where you take this code and you put it back. And then suddenly you are you and everything is okay. And they will save as a JSON, credentials JSON file. And it takes a little while for them, and then hopefully, after a while, with a little Wi-Fi luck, yes, it should work. It will work. And there you are. So now I've registered everything, my actions JSON. I told it to work for 19 years, which it won't. And I'm given some options here. I can simulate here directly. I can write whatever I want to try out, which is super boring, of course. I can open the web simulator, which I will show you. And the web simulator is just this super simple version of Google Home in your browser. And of course, it's far from sci-fi as that one, but it works to try things out. If I can click on that and get started, well, doesn't matter. What it does is it will give you a prompt you can write, and you can actually talk to it as well, because it will have a microphone thing. It will. Let's press more times, maybe it will work. No, reload it. I had this problem this morning as well. I don't know why. Oh, here we are. Yeah, maybe it was an ad blocker thing. And you get this here, and you can see your action, and I have Magic Console. And if I say, let me talk to Magic Console like this, it will try to access it, and you see some stuff here. But it won't. Nothing will happen because we haven't any. We don't have any server, so nothing will happen here. So.
Can you convert an old computer to a Google Home?
I think you can if you really are masochistic and you really want. And this costs 1,000 crowns, so I would say it's much easier. Oh. No, but I can show you how you can order it if you want, but I'm not trying to sell anything here, so let's take it later. Let's get back to this one. There we are. So the next step here is, of course, to begin to code our super awesome server. And this is, I mean, this is not much code. I don't know how many of you are Node developers. A couple of you. Well, okay, you know JavaScript, so this is very small. But yes, I don't know how to zoom Keynote. So what you need to do is to load their npm module, and then you have an express server and a body parser. That's just to make sure that you can parse JSON. Is it very difficult to read? There are, you can go there, you can sit here if you want. And the next thing, of course, this is nothing specifically to Google. You choose your port and you say, I will accept JSON and nothing else right now. And then you create a post endpoint. So in this, I don't know if you remember, but I chose Hello World right now as on my endpoint, and that's it. Then you connect your assistant to the request and response from Express. Nothing fancy. And after that, it's where we get more interesting. So I have a function. We'll take the assistant, and now I begin to write some stuff here and some stuff here. So what you can see here is actually like XML language for speech called SSML, I think, and it's like this XML to tell it how to pronounce things. So if I have this, it will speak. If I have break time 1, it will pause for 1 second, and you have different things. You can, for example, tell it to, instead of saying 100, you can say 100. So different kind of options here. And there is lots of information about this. I think this is the same thing they use, for example, when you're creating voice services, when a phone will call you automatically, or you call an automatic answering thing. Lots of things to do. So what you could see here is the answer that I will give when we call it the first time, and then I gave 3 different phrases that will be used to respond if I don't say anything. So if I start my application and then I'm just quiet, it will try to ask me something like this. And after that, this is just the assistant thing. You build an input prompt because I'm going to expect an answer. And then you send it back. And this is basically what we do. That's the flow I showed you before. The sound comes into Google, it will parse it, it will do a post, it will get here, it will answer, it will get back to your assistant, it will speak. And then maybe you want to do something more. So you have a small function here that will actually do this magic thing. It will print it out in the console and tell something else. And then I forgot to say this. So if you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but now we say get argument text. That means that when we get into this function, we are providing a variable, and that's the variable we had in this on the action JSON file. So we can say this variable is called text, very super good variable name, and that's the one we're aiming to get. Then you have to build an action map and let Google handle the response, or let the SDK handle the response, and then just begin to listen to the port, and then suddenly you have a server and everything is perfect. So let's run this and see what happens. What did I call it? I think it's so simple as this one. Okay. You can't see anything because I'm seeing it by myself. There you are. If you didn't see the code, then we can, of course, get a lot of errors because that's super cool. Oh, so many errors. There we are. Oh, very many errors. Let's skip this. Now the server is running. So if I use something like this now, and I copy whatever I said here before, and this is just my computer. Hopefully, there is post. This is just my computer right now.
I'm Foo Café. I can write whatever you tell me to the console. Just tell me something.
So here you can see all the information that is sent, whatever you might say. So I can say hello, and this is sent back to the server, and then you get that one. And that's okay. But, I mean, it's not as fun, of course, as having this one. So let's... Exactly. So as you can... Do you see, I turned my back, and then it suddenly began to come alive. So, our trigger phase. So in this case, I would say, hey, Google, let me talk to Magic Console.
My apologies.
Oh.
I don't understand.
You have to be, you can't like suddenly in the middle of a sentence try to correct yourself. Okay, Google, let me talk to Magic Console.
Sure, here's Magic Console.
Hi, Foo Café. I can write whatever you tell me to the console. Just tell me something.
Hello, world.
Check your console for some magic.
Sci-fi! And I mean, of course, very simple example, but what this means is that you suddenly have everything you need to do whatever you want, because, okay, now we just print something to the console, that's super boring, but we have the way into our server, and with that we can do whatever we want. I have another super simple example where I will just show you something else, blah, blah, blah. So, not much more meaning than the before, but let's do this. So now I'm registering another action JSON file, another phrase to call it, and if I say the right words, which I've forgotten, that's why I have my cheat sheet here.
Camilo, when you do the push, it's basically you're substituting the...
Yeah, exactly. So I can show you. It's quite obvious when you see here. Right now, this is the one we had before. If I reload now, I will get the new one. As you can see here, I had another one from API.ai, which I don't think you have the same limitations, but I mean, this is boring. So this is the one that we're replacing right now for 24 hours or until this date here. But again, that doesn't work. I think it's a couple of days they give you. So what can we do with this? We can say something like, let's start the server. No, there we are. We can say something like, hey Google, talk to Magic Color.
Sorry, I don't know how to help with that.
Okay, sorry. Hey Google. Don't ruin it. No, I can, but you can't. Hey Google, talk to Magic Color.
Sorry, I'm not sure how to help with that yet.
Why not? Talk to Magic Color, that's what I said.
Sure, here's Magic.
No. Yes. Super.
Hi, Foo Café. I can check if a color is light or dark. Just say a color.
No, let's write. This is much more boring, but okay.
The color blue is dark.
So, okay, Google, talk to Magic Color. Talk to Magic Color.
Sure, here's Magic Color.
Hi, Foo Café. I can check if a color is light or dark. Just say a color.
Light blue.
The color light blue is dark.
Okay. I had a little pause there. My English isn't perfect. If I had said it light blue as one, it would have worked actually. What I wanted to show with this is that if we do color check, no, sorry. Let's kill this and say magic colors. The difference here in the actions file is that I have on schema with the schema.org reference a color, so it will be much better at recognizing a color instead of whatever text I might input here. So hopefully it will recognize the speech much easier than before. And since there are so many different things you can do, I mean, this is just colors, but there are movies and TV series and whatever. You can create stuff that is a little more complicated than this. I have one final example. I will need to switch to my computer right now and run something else. So I'm replacing again the other one. And this is actually something that we have been having on all the time, almost, because it's a cool, simple thing to do when it works. Soon, there we are. And hopefully it works the first time, otherwise. So this is our beautiful site, and hopefully I can say something like this. Okay, Google, make everything. No, sorry. Okay, Google, tell our site to make everything green.
Sorry.
No.
I don't know how to help with that.
Damn it. Demo God. It's always like this. I don't know if I have to tell this to get better. I don't know. Let's try it again. Okay, Google, tell our site to make everything green.
Sorry. I don't know how to help with that.
This is not good. As always, it worked perfectly before. I will need to do some behind the scene things, and then it will work. Okay, I think they actually want me to run the first time in this console first, and then it works. So let's hope for a better demo. Okay, Google, tell our site to make everything yellow.
My apologies. I don't understand.
You see, it's perfect. Okay, Google, tell our site to make everything red.
Sure, here's our site.
Hi, I can control our site's colors. Just say green or red.
Blue?
Okay, I made all SVG blue.
So, of course, when I reload it, it will disappear, but it's a cool demo anyway. So that was my...
This works for all the sites?
No, just our right now. Maybe we can do some like injection of our code to every site and make everything get like this. I don't know. Let's see here. So I have some small things to say more. This was this. I won't show you much more code. I think this is enough to at least know that you have the potential to do whatever you want. When we get a response and a post into whatever server we have, we can do whatever we want. At home, I've done this, and I can control my espresso machine to turn it on and things alike. I don't use it that much, but it feels very good at my heart to know that I can. The other kind of actions you can do that Google hasn't opened for normal developers yet are direct actions, which means that you tell it to do something and it will do it directly. So I don't say,
Microphone off.
hey Google, tell our site to make something. I just say, hey Google, turn on the lamp, or hey Google, do this. That's a direct action, and that's right now reserved for like the bigger players that want to control your appliances. So right now you can, for example, control hue lamps and smart things. Was it? Yeah. Things like that. And another thing that I didn't mention here is conversation. So for example, you can actually have a conversation with it. There are some games where you say, I want to open the adventure, and then you say, I want to go to the north, and they tell it what you find there, and it's like this 80s role-playing adventure book thing. And one thing I won't mention here, because I haven't done it myself yet, is the release part. When you are ready, when you have done everything you need, you actually have to go through the registration phase like an app store, because they need to approve your name, they need to approve everything else, and I haven't done that much yet on that. And as small last things is that I mean, it's obviously that this is not here right now. It works. It actually works better than on the demo. And there are no clients that we have that are asking us to create all these cool features for voice assistants. But I think we are getting there. I think that when you're developing sites today, APIs, it's important, as I mentioned before, to think about this as well. Make sure that the data is available. Make sure that you use schema.org on the normal website, or at least a good API that Google, Amazon, Siri, whoever can find your information, because your clients or your product will get behind if you don't take care of this. Maybe not now, but say a couple of years, this will be what they will try to do. And I mean, you have seen it yourselves. If you're looking for, like, when something is open, a store is open, you don't need anymore to go to the store's website and find where they have open the opening times. You go to Google Maps or you search it, and you get not only that, you get when people are there, when there's most traffic, etc. And this is the kind of information you have to get out to make these things work. And then, of course, it's super fun to have something like this. It's like I said before, it's a little more science fiction. My home is more science fiction than many of yours, I hope. Some useful links that I can put out somewhere after this, mainly the Google things, of course. And if you have any questions, please let me know. I will put up the examples here if you are interested. I mean, you can run this without having one of those. You can run it just in the console, as you see, or in the web version. We have a podcast at Sheffield Hour where we have mentioned this a couple of times. And if you want anything with me, just let me know. Thank you.